They were great heroes, but no one really said they'd be the best of parents. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here from Fat. Have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Here's another fun fact. Here we are to do a breakdown and review of chapter 215 of Four Knights of the which is known as Parental Affection Awkwardly Provided. And yeah, an accurate title to the chapter in literally every way, shape, and form. And once again, kind of like last chapter, this chapter is just peak Nakaba Suzuki character writing. I don't know what Nakaba does, but occasionally Nakaba just gets into the bag and stops straight banger chapter after banger chapter after banger chapter, very specifically on the character front. We do get a little hint, a lick, a whiff of taste of action in this chapter as well. Don't get me wrong, it's not a solely words chapter, but very specifically just the way that he writes all the characters here reminds me why, in spite of how freaky this man is, and I mean freaky with a capital F and a capital rest of the word, freaky, he's still a fantastic character writer, and this chapter is proof of that. So let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into it. But of course, before we actually hop into it, plot twist, I tricked you. You can check out the live reactions, about 27 minutes long, over on Patreon for as low as $1 a month. You can member first, as $3 a month to get access to the live reaction, early videos, so you're never at the end of every single video. I will keep plugging it. Please. It helps out so much. But with that being the case, let's hop into the chapter itself. We see on the cover page that currently a skirmish is going on in the middle of this battlefield. And by battlefield, I mean a hole in the ground. Meliodas and Tristan are going at it. And by Meliodas and Tristan are going at it, I mean Tristan is fighting for his good life in Demon Mark as his father laughs at him in base. They're going tick, 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 and clashing blades. Obviously, Tristan is actually only using one sword here, which is actually pretty interesting. We know Tristan is a dual wielder, but in this case, since he's specifically only training one side of his abilities, I'm guessing he's resorting to training with one singular sword, which may not be the best, because he needs all the help he can get against his father, as Meliodas and him are running around, dashing around, and Meliodas is currently just beating the taste out of him. After one singular impact, he sends Tristan flying, even though Tristan does seem to block it, and then Tristan responds with Dark Hail, a new version of his attack, I think, because we've seen Tristan use Dark Snow. That's what he used in order to set up for Annihilation, the combination of his light and darkness abilities. But in this case, he just uses Dark Hail, which seems to be like a miniature Trillion Dark of sorts, which will feed into the whole idea later on in the chapter of you are not just supposed to be your parent, you're supposed to be something different. And we see Meliodas simply smile in the face of his son, hit a full counter, and immediately reflect the Dark Hail back, sending it right back at Tristan. This once again will continue to fuel the ever eternal debate of like, is darkness magic in Seven Deadly Sins? Or is it something physical? I don't know. The only reason that thing is a debate is because Zeldris is able to be affected by Meliodas what appears to be darkness. But like, that could be a case of darkness being a physical thing, and like any of the named attacks are magic infused, and thusly they can be affected by full counter. Because we know full counter does work on magically infused weapons as well, right? Like it's not exclusively, it doesn't just exclusively reflect the magic. If a physical property is imbued with magical energy, then it can be full counter. We see this with trees getting, or like tree attacks infused with full counters. We see the original full counter against Twigo. That's a sword being swung. It gets full countered back anyway because the magic was infused into it. But with it being the case, Meliodas hits full counter, knocks Tristan back, absolutely body bags him. And admittedly, I and many others have been clowning on Tristan already from last chapter, kind of being bullied in base, or bullied in Demon Mark while his father's in base. But to come to Tristan's defense, just because Meliodas is in base doesn't mean this Meliodas probably wouldn't take the entire original series for a walk outside like the Chaos family. I want us to remember that Meliodas in base 18 years ago, pre-Tristan, while mentally nerfed, mind you, which we know is massive in Seven Deadly Sins. A mental nerf can drastically lower your potency. And not even really using Lost Vein. I'm talking all the nerfs you can imagine was in base, mind you, bullying Zeldris plus the 10 Commandments in first form DKZL. Yeah, that Zeldris was also getting walked on by a base Meliodas. Now, do I think that Tristan is at that level? I personally don't think so. I agree with like the common consensus that I saw on my poll for last chapter, where a lot of y'all kind of disagreed with me and said, yeah, Tristan's probably more so in the, like, let me double check. Yeah, the High Commandment / High Archangel tier. Maybe he's like on the level. Personally, I would actually have him lower than like Ludishel. I know that my L fans are going to click their heels when I say this, I'd have him lower than Mael. I'd have him lower than Zeldris, definitely lower than Assault Mode Mel, or Leader of the Ten Commandments. I have him below all of them, but he's like definitely in that tier. He cannot, at least in my opinion. I saw some people, very few people put him on mid Commandment tier, very few people put him on mid Archangel tier, and I do agree with that. He was able to bully Meligaland in Demon Mark 2 years ago before he got even stronger, and that Meligaland should be at least comparable or equal to, if not stronger, than just regular Prime Galand, who was able to somewhat keep up with the mid tier Archangels. And that was just in base, and then he went critical over, and then he was able to like throw Tarmiel's light attack on top of Sar. So like obviously that was that Galand. Then he got Chaos Amped. Then he fused with the Chaos Amp Melascula, and he still got bullied by Demon Mark Tristan 2 years ago. So I agree, he's probably in that high Commandment, high Archangel tier, like just right beneath Baal and Ludisho and Zeldris and Ten Commandments Meliodas. Everybody else, though, everyone beneath that, they probably get bullied by this Tristan. But at the same time, because I'm saying that, I disagree with the 22% who had him on the Godly tier. Even though clearly Base Mel is one of those Godly tier characters, he's literally able to directly compete with the Godly tier 18 years ago, and he's presumably only gotten stronger and more refined over the 18-year time skip. It's still very, very likely that Mel isn't going anywhere near all out. Notably, while he's using full counter, he's actually swinging his sword around a little bit. You know, he do be waving that thing. He's waving it because they're sword fighting. He doesn't actually need it. He's not even using Lost Vein. He's using some random training sword. Or maybe not a training sword, but still just a random sword. He's not even using a Sacred Treasure. So, clearly, I don't think Tristan's actually on the level of the gods. But higher Archangel tier, just based off his previous feats, yeah, that seems to make sense. But with it being the case, Meliodas is still absolutely bullying his son. And I'll admit, I was low-key hoping that we could get, like, a full counter volley situation going on here. Where, like, we could see Meliodas use full counter, and then Tristan full counters back, and then Meliodas full counters again, and then Tristan full counters back, and it just keeps going and going and going until Tristan can't keep up, and then gets boomed by a full counter that's like giga amplified. Obviously, it wouldn't really make sense. I get why Nakama goes with the one full counter, because full counter already doubles an attack's potency. So, like, if Tristan were to survive, like, I don't know, 8-tiered full counter, that would mean his durability is way higher than it should be. So it makes sense that he immediately gets doomed by one immediate Dark Hail Refraction. He gets immediately doomed by one Dark Hail Reflection that sends him into the wall and gets a quick cut, bam, 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 straight into the ground. And Meliodas puts the hands in his pockets, or puts a hand in his pocket, throws a sword over his shoulder, and taps right on over to his son, who is still standing, admittedly. You know, barely, but he's standing and going. And anyone who's ever tried to fight either their father or an older family member when they were young, you know this feeling. This feeling where you don't want to give up, but you've also done no damage to them. And if you did do damage, it was very surface level. I think I, like, scratched his arm a little bit. They threw me. I'm talking about one of my older cousins, not my father. I never even tried to fight my father. That was a losing battle. I was like, they're big. I can fight him. I was like 5. I immediately got washed. But, with it being the case, Tristan is still standing. He still wants to at least attempt to prove his worth while in Demon Mark. However, this is technically good for Tristan because he is using Demon Mark. He is presumably going all out. But he's not losing control. Notably, the 3-minute timer that Tantris established that he has in this form may have not been reached yet. They do seem to have been fighting for a little bit here, and obviously he immediately went to Demon Mark last chapter. So maybe getting the taste beaten out of him is helping him maintain control over his Demon Mark. And obviously, even if you were to tweak out, like, it doesn't matter. Base Mel would still probably be able to bully Demonic Mark. Well, no, not even probably. Would be able to bully Demon Mark Tristan with no problem. Even a fully Berserk one. But with it being the case, we see that Meliodas, seeing his son, you know, huffing and puffing, is like, hey, what's up, sport? You, want to take a break? And Tristan says, no, not yet. And Meliodas says, come on now, don't push it. You're real out of breath, man. And naturally, Tristan, upon realizing that it may just be a little bit fried, is like, and just gives up. And you know what? I don't blame him, right? Like, I'm all for throwing yourself up against a brick wall over and over and over again to eventually dent it. Heck, ultimately, when you think about it, that's kind of what any sort of training is. You keep throwing yourself up against the same brick wall until you move on to the slightly bigger brick wall. But at the same time, if you're getting nothing out of it and you aren't giving your body the proper time to rest and recover, or at least somewhat recuperate and understand what you're doing wrong or what you could be doing better, then yeah, you're better off just taking a break and actually doing that, actually reflecting. It is ultimately when you rest that your body does the development. While it is good to stretch those muscles out, tear those muscle fibers, destroy your physical form, you don't give the physical form time to regenerate, you're not really going to get much out of it. So we see Tristan go back in the base. And we see that ultimately he's still breathing heavy, right? And he even asks, why aren't you even panting a bit, Papa? Which obviously does seem kind of crazy considering how much they've been fighting. But at the same time, Tristan doesn't know about his father's what? Weren't they fighting the Demon King for like 80 years? Admittedly, that wasn't. No, that was Meliodas' soul. So like, Meliodas doesn't have that feat. It's a bond feat. But still, Meliodas, he's got War of Attrition down. And we see that Meliodas jokes about, I assume it was a joke or just a weird translation thing, as he says, well, I'm not young. Don't want to move around too much now. Which, like, chronologically and biologically speaking, he's right. Like, I think physically, Meliodas is like over 3,000, right? At a bare minimum. I'm thinking right. If I'm thinking right, he has to be over 3,000 because 3,000 year time skip. We don't know how long Mel was alive pre-time skip. That is one weird thing. In fact, I don't think we know. Let me double check. I don't think we know Elizabeth either. Hold on. Let me read the wiki real quick. But I don't think we know how old Elizabeth and Meliodas were before the 3,000 year time skip. I don't think we do. But at least 3,000 year time skip, he lived all those lifetimes. The only reason I'm not saying he's like 4,000 plus, like I would say how Bond is like 1,000 plus. Let me see. Age. Yeah, this is just human Elizabeth. 16, 27, 30, 32, 34. Yeah. So like it's not popping up here. But, and maybe I could go to, no, it's just saying goddess, human vessel. Let me see. Maybe if I go, nope, that's a druid. All right. Let me click on this. Let me see. Human. Not human. All right. But we don't know how old they were pre-time skip. But we know Meliodas lived out the 3,000 years. The reason I don't count the purgatory years is because that's Mel's soul specifically being trapped there. His physical form was left in the real world. That's noted both times he goes. Like, when we see him go after losing his life to the Ten Commandments, his physical body's still there. Elizabeth heals it. She takes care of it. But then his soul is fighting the Demon King and then leaves and comes back more evil than before. And then when he goes again, Meliodas' body is the main antagonist, right? It's him without emotions, him without a soul, and his soul is still fighting in purgatory. So I don't count the 1,000 years that was spent there. Like, Mel isn't like 4,000, but he is at least 3,000. So he is actually pretty biologically and chronologically old. But he isn't, like, actually old, if that makes any sense. Like, he's no worse for wear physically. So that's why I feel like it's almost a mistranslation. I'm not young, don't want to move around too much. If not a mistranslation, it's probably a joke, right? Like, he's just like, I'm not paying because y'all haven't really done anything. You didn't do anything to make me tired out, even in the slightest, which makes sense. Once again, Meliodas has fought endless wars of attrition. But we see Tristan be shocked by this and say, but this is... I can't even bow before Lancelot, much less stand alongside him, which, unfortunately, at the current point, is very true. It's clear that Tristan just... Like, it feels so bad saying Tristan's not comp, but, like, we see what's happening, right? Like, we see he's not comp, right? Like, this isn't... Well, I'm not being delusional or nothing. This fella just ain't got the sauce in him. And him not being able to bow before Lancelot is unfortunately very, very accurate. Because Lance is definitely in, if not above, the godly tier. But, with it being the case, we see as Tristan punches the ground, Meliodas decides to give him a little bit of lessons on darkness. A lesson for us, too, because I did not know it functioned like this. And I feel like this isn't how it always functioned, but, we gotta do something. As Meliodas says, hey, don't panic. You're on the right track. And Tristan says, I don't need your pity. You didn't even use your demon force. Which, admittedly, I understand that. It's. But then again, I'm trying to think, is there any time where I was like, I don't need your pity, father? Not necessarily. Because, like, there's rarely a time where he would pity me. He'd be like, he'd always just tell me, lock in, son. I'd be like, all right, son. Whatever you say, father. He wouldn't use the words lock in. He was a Nigerian man. He never said lock in. But he was like, focus up. And I would just have to focus up. But in particular, I understand. Like, you don't want to be babied. Especially once you are an adult. It is weird. And not even an adult. Like, once you're just old enough to realize that you're not a baby anymore. You're cognizant enough to be like that. You don't want to be babied. And just being, like, patronized. Like, oh, you're on the right track. Oh, you're doing good enough. It's like, it's all or nothing right now. Right now, it's nothing. But we see that Meliodas points out, what do you mean? Sure I did. And Tristan's like, Pops, you know I'm not stupid, right? I know what your demon mark looks like. I ain't seen your eyes even flicker the slightest bit of black. And we see that Meliodas explains, you gain a lot from that demon transformation. It boosts not just your senses, but your offense, defense, speed, everything all at once. But on the other hand, it consumes your magic force and extracts a heavy toll on your spirit. Now, this initially in the live reaction, we should check it over on Patreon for those $1 a month. You can remember for those $3 a month, check out the live reaction. In the live reaction, I was like, huh? Because, like, what do you mean that? What do you mean that this is how it works? Consumes your magic force and extracts the heavy toll on your spirit. We literally see every half-relevant demon sit in Demon Mark. Like, literally, we see Derriere and Monspeed without Demon Mark for like 2 seconds. Even then, they pretty much immediately turn it back on. Like, it doesn't seem to be stressful for them. They literally sleep in Demon Mark. We've seen characters maintain their Demon Mark while unconscious. What do you mean it consumes your magic force and exacts a heavy toll on your spirit? But I think I know why it's like that for Tristan in particular, and maybe younger demons, because they're younger demons. When you think about it, every single demon we see with a Demon Mark in the original series is extremely old or experienced. They're all war veterans, right? We just see the commandments with their marks on 24/7. And so presumably, it's not like it has a consistent set drain. It's like Super Saiyan, where the initial uses of it take a lot of energy. They're very heavily taxing on you. But after a while, you can sort of get the consumption down to zero. It's kind of like, for example, this is my normal state. See how, like, there's no, like, definition in my arms or anything like that. Like, I'm not flexing at all. But, hypothetically, there's barely a difference. Like, it's really hard to tell. But, essentially, right now, my arms are currently flexed. I'm flexing my core, I'm flexing everything. I'm holding it. This is definitely consuming some energy from your boy. Just keeping my muscles tensed at all times, right? I'm flexing them as hard as I can. They're bursting out my body, gosh darn it. But I'm not used to this. I'm like, look at how awkward it is. I'm trying to flex it, but like, it's just weird, right? I'm not used to it. But hypothetically, if I were to, well, I'm going to keep training, but once I keep training, and once I get more and more used to this will not be strenuous. This will not be something that's going to take too much energy, and I could probably do it passively. Think of all the people you see that are super duper vascular and essentially look like they have a pump 24/7. They're essentially the experienced demon sitting in Demon Mark, right? Where ultimately they do still have a pumped state, but they aren't ever in like a non-pump state. They always have Demon Mark on. But we've seen with Zeldris, you can advance the Demon Mark, and we've seen with I think some other demons you can advance the Demon Mark. Because mainly Mel and Zell, who are royal demons, so it's a little bit different for them. But still, that is the case there. I'm assuming it's like Super Saiyan. I'm assuming it's like musculature. You can get to a certain point where you don't have to go back to base, and it doesn't really consume too much magic, and it doesn't take a heavy toll on your spirit. It's like maybe little incremental nips at it at most, but that's with continuous training and maintenance. So I do hope we get to see a demon Mark Tristan just consistently. Please, let's see it. And notably, he doesn't even bring that up to Tristan in this case. In fact, he does something even more unique, as he says, "So I use it the exact instant where and when I strike." We see Meliodas knock on the ground. Then he raises his fist up, coats it in the dark energy like veins, and then boom, punches the ground, causing a slight burst explosion. Which does mean that he was doing this against Tristan as well. We just didn't really see it because it's happening so fast. And with that being the case, we see Tristan be like, "Oh, boy, sweet mother mercy." And he explains that the exact instant where and when I strike. On the fist at impact. Or on my legs when I'm edging back or closing in. And we see him use it to enhance in speed. Now, this naturally does raise a question, like, those still have the properties of darkness, right? Where they're, like, extra tough and hard. So, like, could he simply just maintain that without ever going Demon Mark? Presumably he could. He says the instant when and where I strike, but like, I do wonder, could he just consistently flatline, keep going? Like, could he just do that consistently without any issue? I'm assuming he probably can. That's probably what he does, right? He's taking it in baby steps for Tristan. And it does, once again, really, we'll never see it. We may see, people have given me hope with last chapter leading to a lot of discussions about like Meliodas and Elizabeth training Tristan. A lot of people have given me hope that Nakama may actually one day draw Meliodas versus Elizabeth, which he said he would, but I highly doubt he will. But y'all have given me a little bit more hope because this sort of baby steps training young demon raising, which is what we're seeing, right? We're not seeing an experienced demon in Tristan. We're seeing basically a newborn baby. Remember, demons live up to 1,000 years on average. Tristan's 18. He hasn't even lived 1% of his lifespan, right? Is that right? No. He's lived more than 1%. He's lived like 1.1%. Because 1% of his lifespan will be 10 years. So, like, he's lived barely 2% of his lifespan, And he spent even less of that actually refining his demon abilities. So he's basically like a newborn baby demon who needs to learn everything step by step. And I would love to see, not on top of just Meliodas versus Elizabeth, to actually get that, I would have loved to see Chandler and Cusack presumably raising Meliodas and Elders through these same means. This is probably the baby steps, right? Okay, get used to imbuing your fist and your body with darkness right at the point of impact, and boom. And then soon enough, you'll get used to infusing it more throughout your body, and then you'll get used to Demon Mark, just maintaining it and holding it, and you'll eventually get to a state where you can do it 24/7. Because that's what MC Mel is always doing. And with that being the case, it'd be really nice to see. I love seeing this lore. I love seeing this history, and I would love to see Mel himself learn this. Or even invent this. Because admittedly, you could argue that this is still an advanced technique, partially applying darkness energy. It very much reminds me of the God to Blue switch. For any of my Dragon Ball Super fans out there, if you'll remember, Vegeta in the Goku Black arc of the manga invented the God to Blue switch, where ultimately he used Super Saiyan God, a much less strenuous and energy-taxing form, most of the time when he was just typically fighting and moving about. But then on the point of impact, defense or offensively, he would switch to Super Saiyan Blue, a much stronger form, but that was much more taxing to maintain. This technically is the same thing as that, where you save the burst of strength, the true limits of your strength, until the point of impact. The anime adapts this with Son Goku in the Tournament of Power when he's fighting alongside Hit against Dispo, when he does the God to Blue switch as well. So this is what that reminds me of, which makes me think it could be more advanced. But at the same time, regardless, it's nice to see Meliodas actually teaching Tristan stuff like this. And naturally, this opens the door to Nephilim Tristan a bit more. The idea that maybe, instead of fully going Demon Mark, he could go full goddess mode, double triskelion and everything, glowing bright eyes, but then on the points of impact, he's infusing darkness and then attacking, right? So he's essentially getting the Nephilim mode without actually going Nephilim mode. And I do want to see him consistently go Nephilim mode more. I'm still kind of sad that D-Mark is actually his peak. I would love Nephilim mode to be stronger, but at the same time, it makes sense why it isn't. The Light and Darkness are probably still fighting inside of him. Speaking of the Light and Darkness, though, I'm kind of sad we haven't gotten to see him show Meliodas Annihilation or Elizabeth Annihilation. That would be neat. I don't know, but will probably see that. I doubt, maybe next chapter we'll come back to this, but based on how this chapter ends, I wouldn't be shocked if we don't come back to this for a little while. But we see Meliodas dodge and skid about, and Tristan is shocked to see it. And Meliodas says, so yeah, that sort of thing. And Tristan goes, wow, that's incredible. And Meliodas laughs and says, rare praise from you, huh? Which, I get it. It's obvious by last chapter and just, the general nature of how Tristan feels about his demonic side, that he probably just doesn't spend too much time with his dad, and thusly he doesn't really glaze his dad all that often, at least not really to his face. So, thusly, Meliodas actually being happy to get praise from his son. It's nice. It's very nice. It's like, notably, once again, I don't have kids. As far as I know. I don't have kids. Yeah, I don't have kids. But would that be the case? I don't have kids, but whenever any of, younger family members, thanks, Uncle Pencil, I'm always like, or typically, I remember there was one time where one of the children had dropped their thing and it rolled into the couch. And they were just a little bit too big to stick their arm under there. I was obviously way too big to stick my arm underneath the couch. So I was like, hold on, back up. And I went and lifted the couch. I just lifted it up. And they went under there, they grabbed it, and they were like, wow, that was amazing, Uncle Pencil. I was like, my heart, you didn't have to unclefy me, because I'm not actually your uncle, but my heart. They call me uncle because I'm just drastically older than them. I'm not actually their uncle. I am just their cousin once removed. I think that's how it works, because they are my first cousins. So are they my second cousin? How's it once? I don't get the whole cousin thing, and I don't blame them for calling me uncle. Some of my cousins who are like that just call me cousin as well, but I don't the cousin first, twice removed, whatever. But essentially, they're my first cousin's kids. They call me uncle, because I'm old enough to be their uncle. But at the same time, legally speaking, I think they're just my second cousin. Hold on. Second cousin. I'm going to Google this right now. Second. I can type. I swear. Second cousin. What is that? Second cousin is the child of a parent's first cousin. Meaning they share great-grandparents, but not grandparents. Okay, now. Cousin. Let's just do cousin once removed. Cousin once removed, second cousin. The main difference is second cousins are in the same generation, while first cousins are once removed in a different generation. Okay, I don't get it. What would it be? Hold on. You, first cousin. Okay. So, aunt or uncle. Yep, aunt or uncle. So, I guess technically they are my... First cousin once removed. There we go. First cousin once removed. That's what they would be. But they call me uncle just because it's easier. And I don't like that. That's a very, if you could see me as a full grown adult and remember it, obviously the kids are not going to remember that. So they just call me uncle. But with it being the case, it is nice. It's nice. It's nice to get praise from the youth, you know? Because usually they just call you old. You know how many times they've been called unk? Once they figure out the word unk, they're like, unk. I'm like, I'm not that old. I am old, but I'm not that old. or they just say this, man, you're too old. They keep asking. Especially when they were young, younger, they're like, "Why are you so old, Uncle Pencil? Where are your kids?" And I'm like, "Okay, you leave me alone, child. I get that enough from your great uncles. Leave me be." But with it being the case, we see that Meliodas says, "Still, a full transformation's more efficient in melees or when you're far outgunned or outnumbered, just when you need to, sort of thing." Sort of thing. But I do get what Meliodas means there, right? Ultimately. And it does explain why the more experienced demons kind of don't do what Mel does, in base at least. They just stick to Demon Mark, because it's just easier. If anything, you would just be better off in specking to maintaining the transformation as long as possible with as little strain as possible, rather than flickering it, right? And like, that's kind of, unironically, that's why the Gods of Blue Switch kind of doesn't like make a reappearance after... Like, literally, I don't think it does. Like, in the manga, it doesn't make an appearance after the Goku Black arc, because it gets very quickly outcrapped. And same thing in the anime. He only uses it against Hit. I don't think he ever uses it again in the anime. But then again, the anime ended the Tournament of Power. In the manga, I just don't think they do it after the Tournament. I don't even think it even happens in the Tournament of Power, when I think about it. But that's the thing, right? While it is a nice temporary fix, and a good way maybe for Tristan to infuse his powers at first, since he already has a Nephilim mode, since he already has a Demon Mark mode, he'd probably be... Stop teasing me, Hawk. But he would probably be better off just mastering Demon Mark and just learning to sit in that. But Meliodas is still trying to just get him to better understand and manipulate his darkness powers anyway, right? Because as we see Tristan sweat over sort of thing, Meliodas points out, but listen, what matters is that you don't let the demon blood flowing in you take control. You take control of it and use it to its full potential. And I do think it's very purposeful that Meliodas remembers the Demon King when he says this. And obviously all these random fodder demons. But it's the Demon King. Why? Because despite the Demon King having a similar mark, in fact, he literally has the same mark as Meliodas on his helmet, when he's possessing Zeldris, the mark that the Demon King develops, especially in his prime Demon King, he has the same mark that Tristan does. And obviously Meliodas has a very negative history with that demon mark, because that's his dad. He has a very negative history with his dad. And obviously he knows the dangers of just darkness and the rampant chaos it can cause based on the darkness that he propagated and spread in the past. So he's very focused on making sure his son doesn't undergo that same tragedy or that same loss because of that same darkness. So he wants him to focus on not becoming like his grandfather, not becoming like random demons that just lose control, not being like him. And once again, the whole big example of the kids don't need to be exactly like their parents. They need to be better. They need to be able to take control. And notably, we see that Meliodas is kind of confused as he sees Tristan look down. And Tristan admits, "You truly amaze me, Papa. I don't know how I could ever be like you." And Meliodas goes flat-faced and smacks his son on the back. And Tristan goes, "Ow!" As Mel says, "You don't need to be me. You're you. And you will get more powerful." And Tristan says, "Oh, no need to comfort me," as his back stings. And Meliodas says, "I'm not trying to." Which is very, very important, right? Notably, it's funny. I don't think he's my dad. Boogie, woogie, woogie. And thusly, he's never been very emotionally direct. Communication isn't his forte, at least when it comes to, like, parenting. He's a very good communicator. He's a yapper, too. Like I said, I come from a long line of yappers. So, like, yeah, it's not, to me, about emotional stuff. Or my brother. I don't know. He's a traditional man in many senses. But there are many ways he's implied, either directly through words or indirectly, where he's like, don't be me. Don't do that. And my mom has said the same thing, like, but she said it more directly because she actually has emotional intelligence and can communicate properly. But they very much push the idea of, like, I'm glad you look up to us. We literally made you. You are us in many ways, shapes, and forms. But you don't have to be us, and you shouldn't be. You should be your own thing in your own way. And admittedly, it's hard for, like, at least speaking from the perspective of a child who was lucky enough to grow up with both parents, it is kind of hard, right? I think of a lot of, like, the things that are unique to me, and even those unique things I can somewhat trace back to them. Like, a lot of my nurture stuff, I can just trace directly back to my mom, whether it be my sense of humor, whether it be how I handle certain situations, whether it be how I carry myself. All of that is just straight up ripped from my mom. I have my own unique things, but those are, like, also technically biologically built for both of them. Like, my voice and my speaking patterns and the octaves it fluctuates to. Those are technically inherited. I didn't control or choose that. Those are all inherited. For a lot of my nature stuff, like how I will immediately react, right? Like my most base instincts and reactions, and or my, just some pieces of my build, right? Like my whole upper body is ripped straight from my dad. How even some of my tastes and stuff like that are ripped straight from them. So it is sometimes hard to separate myself from them, because in a way I am literally them. I always joke about the idea of like, don't worry, I'm literally you, so you don't have to worry about it. I'll experience this for both of us. But in that same vein, it's hard to disconnect. It's hard to de-link from your creators, because they created you and you are the byproduct of them. It's kind of a weird thing. But at the same time, it is good for Meliodas to be focused on the idea of like, dude, don't be me. You've got your own thing. And even if we are similar, which he does go to highlight here when he says, I got this strong thanks to Elizabeth being there. And you have a woman you cherish too. Two now. Right, Tristan? So you'll be fine. Ultimately, he has faith in Tristan's own ability. The fact that he's unique. The fact that he's something different. The fact that he is truly, fundamentally different, right? Ultimately, as different as I am from my mom and dad in many ways, I'm still a human being. Pure as day. Tristan is literally something different from Meliodas. Meliodas is a pure demon. Tristan is a human, demon, goddess, tribrid, dog. Like, they are fundamentally different. They have their own different paths to power, but they still have the same motivation to walk the path to power. And that is very, very true. If you think about it, a lot of Meliodas' strength, while he was always very, very strong, true magic only happened because of Elizabeth. Or at least he only brought it out because of her. He went through all those years of suffering, became so much stronger because of Elizabeth. It is that motivation. And ultimately, he wants to at least pass that message, the importance of the message of connection and the importance of being yourself, to his son. And I think that's very, very good. And we see that Tristan seems to have a little bit of revelation here and says, you know what? Thank you, Papa. And Meliodas goes, he doesn't say you're welcome though. Dude, don't laugh in my face when you beat me up. Like at least let me say you're welcome. I thank you, dog. And I do hope we get to see more of their training. Don't get me wrong, I want to see Elizabeth get in on the training, and I want, like, certain things. I would love to see Tristan show off Annihilation. I would love to see a full counter chain just in general. I would love, like many others, for Tristan to learn a bit more about the Bloody Ellie. I, like many others, do want Tristan to learn the darker history of the Goddess Clan. He still sees the light and darkness as two polar opposites when they are very much intermingled and intertwined, right? Elizabeth caught bodies. Countless bodies. She was the body catcher, body snatcher. You don't get a nickname, the Bloody Ellie, in the demon world, without catching bodies. Heck, you don't even make Mel fall in love with you, unless you could catch some bodies and could throw some hands. So I'm definitely hoping that the whole family can come together, and Tristan can start to get a better revelation and understanding that ultimately the light and darkness, while they stand diametrically opposed, like, literally, as in the sense that light particles destroy darkness particles, the pristine image he has of the Goddess Clan, their powers, their abilities, and his own mother isn't really accurate. And Tristan himself has even expressed interest in this. If you remember all the way back to the Cass Malaskula fight, he wanted to learn more about the Bloody Ellie because his mom just doesn't talk about it. So I'm hoping the key to Tristan's development is understanding and learning more about the past and the history that his mother and father were a part of. It would be really, really nice. And once again, it's learning from the past to grow for the future. And speaking of growing from the past, or learning from the past to grow from the future, we cut away to another duo. And we see Gawain currently testing something. There's a sword in the ground acting as a lightning rod, and there's Gawain chanting. Now, I could risk the chant. I don't know what this means, though. Let's see. Giogu, Vari, Gianvari, Thunderville. But we see the skies begin to rumble. Seemingly enough, is this a cloud? Is this cloud of ground lightning? I'm not sure, because these look like they're drawn clouds. This looks like they're just coming from nowhere. But rumble, blitz javelin. It's the same attack she used on Ballin all that time ago, except it's not full chant. It comes down as a singular individual bolt. I see Gawain go, it didn't work. And Ballin, seeing the magic happen, is like, what didn't work? And note how my boy Ballin has got it on, though. His fit was raggedy. It was in tatters, but now he's looking kind of clean. Same shoulder pauldrons, though. And Emily Gawain is in the exact same outfit. Which doesn't give me hope for the Knights getting new designs, but, like, I hope they do. Except for Lance. Lance's design is fine. But, like, I hope everyone gets a new fit like Ball. It could be a variation on old fit like Ballins here, but look at the fit. Look at the fit. He looks so clean. And we see Gawain saying, "Oh, the whole thing, it's a complete failure." And Ballin is like, "Well, I'll be completely honest with you. Coming from a man with no magic skill, it seems like quite a feat." And hey, I've been Ballin many times before, where someone will do something, and I'm like, that's crazy. But they actually knowing their profession is like, that was actually kind of buns. I was like, cool. But as a person who doesn't know, that's crazy. Like, and even as a person who did have like knowledge in the field, right? Like I used to be a singer. I used to be in choir. So naturally I was a bass. Sometimes a bass too. Shock horror. Man with slightly deep voice sings bass and not tenor. Oh, the humanity. I mean, I did musicals, so I had to sing a whole bunch of tenor anyway, but I was a bass. But when I tell you, sopranos still scare me. like it's just insane to me hearing some of the notes they could hit with their physical I was like, how and you're looking at a guy who has a really high register. I can go super duper high, it's very breathy, but I can go this high, I can speak like this, it sounds absolutely horrific, I'm not gonna do it for too long, but I can do that. I can go, like, I have a falsetto. Oh, that's about as high as I can go. And obviously I haven't sang in years, if you can tell. But like, that's the thing, right? I can hit higher notes. But like, I even hear like just the difference between altos and sopranos alone, right? In the woman's vocal range, like the highest notes of soprano, it just blows my mind. So yeah, it seems like quite a feat. I would hear there's still like notes I heard all years ago where I'm still sitting here like, how did a human body produce that? Ow! It's amazing to me, but that's the thing, I didn't have any talent or skill with that. But of course, just like with Gawain, there were sopranos who I knew who would hit a high note and be like, "Pencil, that was buns, it was trash, it was garbage." I was like, okay. And they would also cough afterwards, because, still straight on their voice, as Gawain says, "Your praise won't do a thing to..." And we see Ballin's like, "Calm down, take some medicine." And Gawain coughs one more time and takes a little slip of the medicine. So I do wonder, why is Gawain needing medicine? Like, I mean, she was brutalized, but should she not get healed? Like, what happened? She should be fine. I wonder what's up with her on that front. But she takes a sip, and she says, "Look, in a spell, every word holds magic force. It's only complete and activated once every syllable is said in the right order." Now, clearly, once again, as I was talking about, the reason this needs to work this way for Tristan, and he doesn't just maintain Demon Mark 24/7, is because he's a baby. I think it's the same case with Gawain, right? She's still a baby sorcerer, because we know this isn't true, right? I mean, like, no, we know it isn't true, because we've seen Merlin cast spells without saying a word. She just makes motions, and then suddenly the spell's activated. So, like, even saying the spell's name isn't always a requirement. We've seen Merlin do this with her teleporting. It's simply done by a snap. We've seen, I think she's launched off Exterminate Rays without saying the chant at all. She doesn't even say Exterminate Ray, the title of the spell. What else have we seen? Her, like, her transportation magic and her absolute cancels also. Like, there's so many things where Merlin has done things without actually needing to chant anything or say a word. But once again, it's all just a testament to Merlin's magic skill, right? She was the greatest sorceress in all of Britannia. She had what? She also, like Mel, had literal thousands of years of experience. Once again, we don't actually know how old Merlin was before she stopped her time. She was a child. But then, like, here's the thing. We know she was a child when she stopped her time and then gave herself the adult physical form, right? She was a child human. So she, like, probably wasn't even as old as Gawain was, right? But we don't know how much time passed between that moment and the start of the 3,000-year time skip. Like, who knows how long it was? Because remember, she had met Meliodas and Elizabeth, but she had met Meliodas before, when she was still a child. Then she was still a child when she met Meliodas and Elizabeth. And then she took on the adult physical form. Wait, no. How does it go? How do the events go? I think she gets saved by Meliodas as a child. She then takes on the adult physical form. Then she meets Meliodas and Elizabeth. She develops a bond with them. Because remember, she does have a bond specifically with Goddess Elizabeth, where she gets the whole, like, sissy thing from. And then time passes, then 3,000-year time skip. So Merlin also is just, like, a dumb, stupid, experienced character, like the demons who all sit in Demon Mark. So it's not necessarily wrong for Gawain, a sorceress of 18 years of experience, and that's assuming she was being trained from birth, which she probably wasn't. Maybe, like, at most a decade of experience, not being able to compare to Worldane, who also seems to be an extremely ancient sorcerer, who also, realistically, isn't anywhere near as skilled as Merlin, despite her implied ancientness. Remember, she created an entire species, and seems to have at least known Merlin. There's some, I forget what the context is, but there's like some reason why Worldane could possibly be as old as Merlin, like from those ancient times. Not just the creating a whole species thing, but it was also... There's something she said that like links her back to Belialwyn, I do believe. And Belialwyn was destroyed 3,000 years ago. But all that being the case, she's not even as good as that. And she needed the chaos buff to get shorter incantations that she still had to cast out, right? She couldn't just point and do magic like Merlin could do. So it's clear that there are still levels upon levels upon levels to it, even with years upon years of experience. So Gawain is still doing pretty darn good for someone who's been practicing magic for maybe at most a decade. And it has only been in active combat with her magic for maybe, like a month? If that? Because remember, we don't know how much active combat she got in on her return to Leonis with Tristan, after she somehow got out of Camelot. But, even still, probably less than 6 months of actual application and combat of her magic. So, she's actually doing pretty darn good. But of course, pretty darn good isn't good enough. As one goes, And Gawain says, attempting to shorten it puts a whole new level of magic force on each word. Here, I'll show you how difficult this is. Gio Gulavo Valavalia, Gio Varcona Tala Bibida. And boom, she gets a full typical Blitz Javelin. And this one actually does manage to damage the sun a little bit, burn the wrappings around it, and Balin goes, oh, okay, that's what you hit me with. And Gawain explains, that's its usual force. So, the issue here seems to be that she can't pack as much magical force into each syllable, right? It's not that, oh no, the spell's just too strong, I need to use the full words. Since she's literally imbuing the magical force in each one, there's like a cap on each syllable that she can put as much magic force into. We know that Merlin seemingly completely transcends this cap, but that's the thing. Gawain has not yet. She still needs more refinement to reach a certain point where she can do something. And she explains, I need to abbreviate the chant and at least get this much out of it, or I'd never equal Worldane of the Four Evils. But I need to shorten my chance for all my future fights, not just against her. And that's also true, because when you think about it, while the Four Evils are clearly comp, they aren't actually comp. Not at all. They're going to run into presumable stronger opponents, whether of Arthur's creation or not. And thusly, they do need much more raw strength. And Gawain needs to become a proper mixed attacker. Of course, she has her base mixed attacking that comes with Dawn, infusing fire and everything. But still, one of the things that makes Gawain so unique is that she does have actual magical spells, apart from her unique magic that she could stack on top of her unique magic. So she could technically get 2 types of Destroyer magic infused on top of her regular cracked physicals, thanks to Dawn. But she can't do that if she doesn't get this chant time down. So that is very, very important. Gawain's evolution is heavily needed, and I'm very excited to see her do it. However, of course, we see that a certain someone has come to give their daughter a little lesson in gains, as certain someone walks up and says, you have much more to learn then. And Gawain turns around in her chair and is shocked to see her mother, or grandmother at least, for right now in Gawain's mind, go, Blitz Javelin, which we know she doesn't actually need to say. We've seen Merlin cast magic without it before. But her Blitz Javelin, which is literally just Blitz Javelin, is massive. Literally look at the size of the lightning bolt. It literally cracks the ground around it, melts the blade entirely, and is so large in scale, it has Balin freaking and geeking and Gawain even blown back and sweating. Once again, she just said the name of the spell and pointed. Didn't take any time at all, and she probably could have done even better. She probably could have just pointed and Blitz Javelin would have come out anyway. I'm pretty sure we saw her do that with Exterminate Ray. But with that being the case, we see the melted blade, and Merlin, it feels weird just calling her Merlin, but like, this is Merlin. Merlin says, you need a far deeper and more thorough knowledge to shorten spells while retaining their power. And that is interesting, right? Merlin doesn't place the idea of the cap, right? The cap that I mentioned where Gawain can only put so much magic in each word, resulting in a weaker spell cast. She says you just need to understand the magic better. You need to understand the spell better in order to use the spell while retaining their power. And that would explain why Merlin struggles, or not struggles, but like she couldn't instantly throw out the time spell. Even when she was like quote unquote fighting Kath for real in that alternate dimension, she still needs to like make hand signs and presumably do chants to get the Chrono Coffin spell off. But for something similar to teleportation, she's gotten that down to a snap. Because she understands the spatial manipulation magic better than she understands the time manipulation magic. Same thing for something like Exterminate Ray. Same thing for anything of her regular, more lower effort spells that don't deal with the complex topic as time manipulation. So it seems like Gawain literally just needs to hit the books more. Which is crazy, because she was already hitting the books over the 2-year time skip. But how much hitting the books will actually help, though, and how much time they have to actually refine Gawain for hitting the books is unknown. So I wonder how Merlin's going to help her develop her understanding of magic to the point where she can actually just pop things off really quickly. And we see that Gawain is just blown away. You didn't even chant any words! That was such a far cry from mine! But notably, it is much more, like, impressed and somewhat horrified, rather than, you know, annoyed and disappointed in oneself. I think that is important, right? I think it's always cool when someone is able to, like, show you ball. Like, for example, I was at the gym this morning. I don't know why I'm so gym focused today, but I was at the gym this morning, and it was a push day, like, and I was pushing. I did it, so my arm's a little bit sore. But there are 2 things I do every single day, regardless when I go to the gym. I go to the gym every single day, but one of the 2 things I always do the 2 ab machines. There are more ab machines, but I just do the 2 because they're right next to each other, and I'm kind of lazy. But there's like the rotary torso machine, and then there's the abdominal crunch machine. But the one thing they do that is technically free weight, quote unquote, is me weight. I do dead hangs / pull-ups. For the longest time, I just did dead hangs, and then I finally got enough strength in my body to actually do some pull-ups. But as I went to go do my pull-ups on a regular spot, someone was already on that I set up for a pull-up, so I went back to the main one, and I saw this guy who I'd seen a whole bunch of times before, and he was just banging out pull. And I'm not even talking like typical wide grip pulls. This man was like up there, closed grip pull, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I was just sitting there watching like, yeah! And this wasn't no small fella. That man had brains. And he popped down. I was like, "Hey, how you do that?" He's like, "You just gotta lock in, Twain." And I locked in. I banged out like 10. But it was mad painful, and they were regular wide grip pull-ups. But notably, that's the idea, right? Gawain has that same like inspiration behind it. She's not hating. She's just like, "You are that much better than me." That's crazy. And it's true. You see ball at such a higher level, and you're like, "I want to reach that ball. I believe I can do it." And I will eventually. I think my record is like 12. No, I think it's like 15, like on a leg day. I was extra motivated for some reason that day. I was able to get out 15, but that was with some struggle in the last 5, so it doesn't really count. I think my best is like actual 10 solid real pull-ups. But I will catch up. I swear it. There's Weary is a common participator in the Twitch streams. Fun fact, I stream on Twitch every Friday at 8 p.m. So come out to the Twitch streams. That guy with the controller. The link is in the description down below. But over there, that man, I think he said he's gotten like 25 pull-ups down, 6'2", 185. That man has my dream build. That man is like, I may be 6'2". I don't know. I think I'm like 6'1" or like 6 foot and like 3/4 inches. But regardless, 185. I'm sitting here at like 230. I want to get to 185 so bad. It's literally, it's me. It's my fault. It's my fault. I just need to eat better. But still, that man's got my dream build. He's an inspiration to your boy. So stuff like that, where I just want to lock in to it. I want to get like him. But we see that obviously Ballin is blown away by the sheer force of that. It's like, who is this monster? Is about to defend Gawain from her own mother. But we see Ballin say, Ballin? And I do like how Ballin, who's already known that he's weaker than Gawain now, is like, stay back, Gawain. I will sacrifice myself for you. Because I'm just built like that. Look at my jawline. And we see that Gawain says, wait, you've got it wrong. These 2 are my grandparents. And the doll says, no. You must understand, Gawain, that we are actually your real parents. Which, like Merlin, you couldn't switch back to the real body for this one? Like I do hope we get lower reasoning on why she took this physical form in particular. Like, obviously, I know she can do this. Her inhabiting a different physical form is not impossible for Merlin. Remember, she was able to transfer her soul into Alden, but clearly, unless Alden is stored inside this mechanical shell or this wooden doll shell, I don't think she's in Alden right now. But we know Merlin can move souls. I mean, mess with that, right? So I get that. But, like, you couldn't have switched back to, like, a form that at least somewhat resembles Gawain? Because Gawain does look like her mother, right? Like, in fact, if Escalon really did lay pipe, his genes didn't fight at all. Gawain is literally just mini Merlin. Down to the hair and everything. But with that being the case, you couldn't have, like, taken on a physical, or, like, at least cast an illusion that lets her know that you look like her. Saying that we're your real parents while you look like that is like, huh? And, like, here's the thing. Gawain could, for all intents and purposes, still be some sort of weird test tube homunculus baby. Could be the case. Still, I don't know. Until I really don't want to see it. But until we get confirmation that Escanor and dragon head form actually laid pipe with Merlin, like, it could just be formed of their two souls mixing in some physical form that could explain Gawain's, like, weird nature and stuff like that. Now she has Dawn at all, considering we don't know what happened there. Like Gawain's still a mystery in many ways, shapes, and forms, placed knowing a lot of the mystery. But still, Merlin, you could have done better. Switch forms before you do this. And naturally, Gawain, hearing that, is like, huh? And she's very confused as Balin goes, I don't get it. Your grandparents are your parents? Like, everybody's confused here. And we see that, naturally, Gawain, who's been raised by these two alongside Kay, is like, is this a new riddle, or what? The only parent I have is Kay, which is interesting, right? That goes to show how much Gawain truly did love her adoptive father, which still makes the vibes of her reintroduction part 2 very, very weird. It felt like she was so nervous around Kay, but still, parents. And we see that Escanor, or Escabone, who isn't fully inked in because Nakaba ran out of time, but I don't blame him. Nakaba hire an assistant, please. But we see that Escanor says, I'm sorry, it's not a joke or a riddle. It's the truth. And we see Gawain sweat drop and even frown at this information, which, once again, it is kind of crazy. Like, obviously Gawain has for the longest time wondered what she is, and even as she does accept Kay as her one only parent, her true father, she knows that, like, Kay isn't actually her father. And knowing that her real parents, quote-unquote, were not even quote-unquote, just her real parents were so close by and still a part of her life, but just didn't tell her the truth. They lied to her, essentially, for however long she's been sentient. So possibly upwards of, like, 16 to... Well, I'm not sure. Like, the earliest I've heard people come sentient is, like, 1. So, like, upwards 17 to possibly more... Well, no, 17 or less years. They've just been lying to her and not telling her the full truth. And sure, they have reasoning behind it, right? But obviously, that doesn't matter to Gawain. Like, you're essentially uprooting a massive part of her life and telling her that you've been here this entire time and lying to her. But we see that Escanor, as this is, the chapter of awkward parents, says, but we had good reason to leave you in the care of Kay. We had no choice, and we thought it'd be best for you. I know you're hearing this out of nowhere might concern you. But Kay said it was about time to tell you the truth. And I agree with that, right? Ultimately, Gawain is an adult, and they need her. Or no, she needs them. Well, and they also need her, but she needs them to be who they are so she can better understand who she is, right? I talked earlier about how, ultimately, it's hard for a child to fully separate themselves from their parents. Especially if you were lucky enough to have both of your parents in your life for an extended period of time. You sort of begin to identify yourself with them. They are you, you are them, to a certain degree. And it takes a while to achieve a sort of degree of individualization. But at the same time, they are there. They need you. It's their responsibility to help define you and help refine you. That's the whole idea of parentage, at least in my mind, right? My whole goal is to provide, if I'm ever lucky enough to have children of my own, my whole goal is to provide them a life even better than mine and make sure they end up better than I ever did. Do I want to do really, really well regardless? Absolutely. But I want them to do better than me. I want them to have a better life than me. I want them to be greater than me. I don't want them to end up in my same place. I want them to be beyond me in every way, shape, and form. But in order to do that, I need to be there and make sure I raise them to that point. And Gawain's at that point now, where ultimately her parents need to tell her the truth. She needs to learn it. It's time. And obviously, we had good reason to leave you in the care of Kay. It has to do with Arthur, right? Just based around the timing. If Gawain truly is 18, as the rest of the cast is, around 18 years ago, Merlin was still serving under Arthur. I believe that's around the time of Cursed by Light. I think Cursed by Light takes place 6 months after the battle with the Demon King. And then I believe Elizabeth gets pregnant with Tristan a while after that. Same with Bond getting pregnant with Lance. So it takes place a little bit, that for the pregnancy, the piping, takes place a little bit after the wedding that's portrayed in Cursed by Light. And we saw in Cursed by Light at that point where Merlin would either have to be right about to get pregnant or right about to make Gawain if she's 18. She was still serving under Arthur. And obviously, Escanor, one of the sevendeadlysins, being alive, either laying pipe or contributing DNA to Gawain, would obviously have been really, really bad. So they needed to essentially hide Gawain from Arthur. But what better way to hide Gawain, the child of Escanor and Merlin, than by hiding her in plain sight and giving her to Kay, Escanor's stepbrother. Obviously, that'd be the first place Arthur would look, but at the same time, it's the first place he'd look. It wouldn't really matter. He wouldn't know that Merlin and Escanor were hiding directly underneath his nose this entire time. So I'm assuming that's why. They couldn't openly parent her because Arthur would have shown up and then went absolutely insane. But with it being the case, even with them not wanting, even with them being told to do it now, this still is rough to hear. And we see Gawain say, I don't want to hear this. And we see Merlin, I'm not sure if this is a mix of her probably being awkward and pragmatic and just very Merlin-esque, that she says, no? Alright then. And she turns to go and leave, like just completely abandon her daughter. Which is very Merlin-esque. Like, once again, Merlin, an interesting character, but not exactly a nice person. And we see Escanor say, whoa, wait. And ultimately, a scientist appears. A scientist I've been wondering the location about. I'm a scientist. I'm a craftsman. Building weapons is what I do. Yes. Hey, sorry to butt in. I realized you were I heard you were here, so. Oh, Dubs. And not just Dubs alone, Gunther, as he says, I'm here too. Showing up just as a head, which I presume Dubs is currently repairing Gunther's body. And also, big question, did you meet Lance, Dubs? I mean, I'm happy, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to know the whereabouts of Escanor and Merlin, and that we're having this moment, and that Ball's here. Oh, that's cool. And last chapter we got the confirmation that Dareth and Gareth are here. Now, the only characters who have, like, open plot threads that should have been resolved before we transition to this new mini arc is, like, Theodora and Izzy. I do want to meet them. Maybe Elizabeth is taking care of them? But then again, Elizabeth was with Meliodas, so, like, I don't know. But regardless, I do want to know where those two are. They're the only two left over, because we know that Dubs and Merlin and Escanor and Gunther all made it out and are here. I'm assuming Dubs did meet Lance and is currently crafting his weapon alongside getting Gunther a new body. Because remember, Gunther was reduced to just a torso. But as you can also tell, man, Nakba ran out of time because barely anyone's colored in here. Or at least inked in. And we see that Balin merely asks, a talking head? Because remember, Balin meant nobody. He meant nobody. Like, he was knocked down to the ground when Gunther got bisected by Beltreep. So he didn't realize Gunther was a homie, and definitely didn't see Gunther get decapitated and be able to talk. And he just barely knows anybody. He's just vibing. Balin's just here for the vibe. And we see that he asks, why all this crowd now? And ultimately, Gunther admits, we need to talk. You see, I heard the whole story from Dubs. Wait, no, see, I want to give, for some reason I can't pull off Seven Deadly Sins abridged Gunther's voice. I don't know what it is. I just need to listen to it more, I'm thinking. Because it's not out of my range. I can do it. But for some reason, I can't get Gunther's voice down. I haven't listened to Dub Gunther in a while. It's almost like, for some reason, I can't link that voice properly. So, excuse me for this horrible Gunther voice that you're about to get. But I'm here too. We need to talk, you see. I heard the whole story from Dubs. But first, hello, Merlin. And hello, Escanor. And I do like how Gunther's smiling as he says this, right? Like, ultimately, he missed his friends, right? Gunther, despite being a puppet, is very human. He has a very human heart. So, being without his two comrades that helped define him for 18 years, it's very nice to see that they're alive and well. Alive, yes. Well, question mark. But he's very happy to see them. And notably, we see Escanor, at least, is very happy to see him as he says, oh, Gunther. Which is very, very nice. Merlin, though, does not seem to have any reaction to Gunther. We know these two have an interesting dynamic. But with it being the case, we see Gawain go, wait, what? As she hears the names Escanor and Merlin. And naturally, Dubs goes, Balin goes, Merlin and Escanor. I recall that two of the seven deadly sins held those names. And ultimately, Gunther's like, yeah, cool story. Heard you're having family trauma right now. We ain't got time for none of that. Well, sorry, but I'm not here to reminisce. Let me be blunt. And naturally, Merlin is like, what you talking about? What you talking about? Like, can you see I'm having a moment? I'm about to abandon my daughter again? What are you talking about? But we see Gunther asks, I want to know if there exists a way to fight back against chaos. And if there does, I want to know how to obtain it. And we see, while Merlin's eyes did snap and wiggle about a little bit, the eyes snap forward with clarity, and the doll speaks. Yes, it is possible. And while that brings a smile to Gunther's face along with the sweat drop, Balin looks very concerned, and Gawain looks seemingly a bit perturbed. You know, she's still dealing with the whole family reveal, and naturally compiling the whole fate of the world thing on top of that probably isn't very, very helpful. So, overall, Gawain is a little bit miffed. But overall, I keep saying overall, a W chapter. Once again, Nakaba with his, saying overall, and once again, I need new words. Furthermore, Nakaba in his character writing is what works the most for me. The thing that always brings me back at the end of the day. It isn't the fights, it isn't the cool designs, it isn't the cool magical abilities. all those help. It is truly the character work and how well thought out and how well executed it is. This entire chapter feels so in character for literally everybody. Going back to Meliodas and Tristan, Meliodas' awkward teaching style and his inability to properly convey how to do something works, right? Meliodas was a genius. And while he was definitely raised and trained by Chandler, he never really got to bond with his son. And while he definitely wanted one all this time, he was kind of comfortable with the idea that Tristan didn't really care for. That's why he's so happy to get praise from him and why he struggles a bit to teach, but still does teach very, very well. Meliodas is good at a lot of things. He's able to understand things that Tristan can't at first. And not only that, Meliodas focusing on Tristan being better than him, and yet understanding the importance of connection also fits for Mel and the entire narrative of Seven-Deadly Sins. Tristan himself struggling yet being amazed by his father also works for the character. A character who feels very inadequate thanks to not being Lancelot, but at the same time wants to be able to stand alongside and help and work with him is very, very good. Meliodas being there to support him through that is fantastic. These two just have an amazing dynamic. I hope we get to see more of it. Once again, I want to see Elizabeth hop on the train, but still a very, very good opening half of the chapter. And the back half of the chapter, once the lore surrounding magic, and also, the lore established and surrounding demon mark or darkness is cool too, but mainly the explanation of magic in some of the Sins universe, or at least for magic spellcasting, very, very cool to see, seeing the levels of it, the variance of it, and how Gawain still needs to grow, and then how Merlin is still so far beyond, but ultimately wants to raise Gawain to that level, is fantastic. Yet seeing Merlin be awkward, Escanor be awkward, not really know how to deal with this, especially considering they didn't even want to. They were just being told that it's the time now, dog. You cannot keep stalling at this point. And being like, fine, I guess this is the time now, dog. We can't keep stalling at this point. And then locking in to actually tell Gawain the truth. It's very, very nice to see. And Gawain's reaction too feels in character, considering this is her entire world being flipped upside down in many different ways. And then with Escanor and Merlin, the previous heroes of the world, being thrown on top of that, it's probably super duper complicated. And Merlin not really knowing how to deal with it and trying to escape the situation also makes sense. She's a woman who consistently ran away from her feelings. That's the whole reason chaos is a problem in the first place, because she never really reconciled her unrequited feelings for Meliodas. And even Dubs is good in this chapter. Along with Go Through, everyone's just nicely written in this chapter. Ballin, it's just a really, really good character chapter. It's a good revelation chapter, a good explanation chapter, and I'm very excited to see what the path to chaos is and how Gawain is going to react. So overall, a W chapter. If you meant all we see in this video, please leave set of sons. Set of sons. Set of sons. And specifically do S-U-N because, Gawain is a woman, so, set of sons in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you want to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also even have a Patreon below where you can support me for as well as one month. You things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member to the channel for as well as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reaction to this very chapter. It is about 27 minutes long on all the live reactions to all the previous chapters and all future chapters. Early access to all my videos. Ad-free early access to all my videos. Your name at the end of literally every single video. And if you become a $3 patron or a $3 member or more, you will get your name read aloud at every single video, at the end of every single video, along with early access, ad-free access to all the videos of my second channel that got the reaction, which will be linked in the description down below, where I drop reaction videos of all kinds and sorts. That will also be linked down there. And if you want to just request a short video or a long video for the one time, you can drop 5 beans to the Ko-Fi, 25 beans to the Ko-Fi. And that, I believe, is all. No more plugging. I have a TikTok. I got the TikTok. There's also a link down below. And I have an Instagram. I don't know if we plug in everything. But regardless, I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, ready to go off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Redwolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Guillaume, Pura Ura, Enzo, Swift Strike, Super Flame Zero, Yuki Ally, ASO2404, Striker Man, Grim, Straw, Ollie, DeBoy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, CCC, Official Popeyes, Ramondo Furin, Crie Panem, Sarah Fiel, Dino, Axis XZ, Plant Crone, Pickle, Heath Nelson, Hector Gonzalez, P-Sub, Black Sage, Zapro, Tim Thomas, Alex Kenny, Kaving, Julian Perez, 8SOA, Akolade Babatunde, Union I, Oryxen, and Nevis97. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our line art tier patrons: A+A, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, and Midnight Lord 21. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our ink tier members: King RTX and Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06. And I'd like to give a thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a vinyl thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Walking Munoz and Walking Munoz.